when the sort of computer revolution hit this particular game, we kind of got a lot of the tools that we needed. So AI is like, I mean, and this is true of AI in the real world too, where people are kind of putting lipstick on a pig. We already had things that were like, hey, I need a 10-letter word that ends in X. Now, it's like pretty good for the brain to think of some examples. And if you think up some examples, you will probably come up with ones that aren't in some online dictionary, and that's great. You might come up with something that is real that you want to put in a puzzle. But it's also nice to see the full sweep of possibilities and kind of curate among them. So the technology does a lot of stuff. The biggest thing it does is just say, I need a 10-letter word that ends in X. Show me all of them, please. It also does things like I'm trying to, there's a scene in the Crossword documentary Wordplay where Merle Regal is just driving around a Florida strip mall and he sees Dunkin' Donuts and he's like, if you take the D from Dunkin' and put it at the end, you get unkind donuts. But he's like, which I've had a few of in my day. So it's like this jocular like strip mall anagramming and wordplay. Um, Doing that in the real world is really fun, and I think everyone should exercise their brain that way. Um, Understanding that putting a D from the beginning of word to its end is going to happen more easily when that word already ends with an N, which D can blend with, or maybe an E to get you a past tense verb. Like getting the arithmetic of language into your bones as a crossword constructor is kind of the most important thing, and you wouldn't want to ever outsource that to a crossword or to an AI. Um, but again, seeing the full sweep, like writing a little script that says, "Hey, give me all the words where they got D at the beginning, and then when I put them at the end, it's still a word." That's still a useful tool. Um, there's a big thing with crossword themes, right? Which are kind of like a scavenger hunt. They're a collection of words that have all had the same operation on them, let's say, or are, trivia pointing to the same thing. And there's a couple things here. One is that uh, using software to find a bunch of possibilities for wordplay is helpful at different moments of the process. So for instance, the D to the end is like a letter-based thing. I had a friend, Tom McCoy, who's a linguist himself, who found pairs like thorough, right, which are the same sound, but it's just the stress that's been switched. And yeah, you can use software to be like, here's a phonological database. Tell me where the sounds are the same, but the emphasis is different. And again, it's kind of fun to think them up on your own, but an AI will help you. There's also just stuff where right now it's just not that good. And I'm not the biggest fan of AI kind of ideologically, but uh, almost objectively, it's just not working at some aspects of crossword gamesmanship. So I have two friends, Brooke Husick and Adam Wagner, who had this puzzle where the theme answers were things like crap shoot, like the word crap shoot. And each of those individual units, crap and shoot, they both mean like damn, right? Crap means damn, shoot means damn. And you just like can't tell an AI to come up with things like that. That's a human noticing, and brainstorming other ones is a human pleasure. So people definitely use it. There are aspects of crossword construction that are more or less amenable to it. And I think the big answer is mostly that whatever we need technology for when it comes to making puzzles, we kind of already have it. So the book is in three sections. The first section are people who are really into crosswords and data and technology. The second is people who are really interested in crosswords and politics. So this idea of, what gets to count as common knowledge, who gets to be in the puzzle and who decides that. And the third is about crosswords and art. And that's kind of the weirdest section, but it's by far my favorite. And there's a whole chapter on crosswords and literature, in which I'm like pretty clear that crosswords are not literature. Um, but it's useful to think about why, because two things are true. One, a lot of literature's greatest practitioners were crossword puzzlers. Nabokov wrote crosswords. T.S. Eliot solved crosswords underneath the table at boring editorial meetings, right? Um, and the reverse is true, which is to say, people who didn't like modernism tarred it as a crossword puzzle school of literature, right? And people called The Wasteland it may be a great poem, or it, on the other hand, may just be a pompous crossword puzzle, right? Why? Because it had wordplay, because it had illusion, and so on. I think the main thing is that crosswords and narrative sit a little bit uneasily next to each other because a crossword has one solution, and a good book, a good piece of literature is infinitely reinterpretable when you're doing it right. But I think that those two things in a happy way can like play off each other. So in the book, I talk about George Perec, who's one of my favorite writers, and he has a book, Life a User's Manual, in the middle of which is an unfinished crossword puzzle. And I don't think you get all the clues, right? So that's like the right stand-in for when crosswords and narrative interact, which is like the unsolvable crossword, right? The crossword that like doesn't let you finish it because crosswords have this thing that they're really ephemeral. The thing about a puzzle is you do it and then you discard it. I mean, when you used to have the paper, you'd take it out of the art section and you'd throw it out after you were done with it, right? So it's one and done. It's single use. And it has that weird aspect to it where it's a single use object that is canonizing what common knowledge for the erudite readers of the New York Times, let's say, are supposed to know. So I really like uh, that dialectic where crosswords on the one hand, you're supposed to solve it and throw it out. And also the things you write that day are like supposed to be some of the most interesting and important and, highbrow proper nouns and bits of language that you'll encounter. Um, so yeah, there's that aspect to it, which I think just like, I don't know, I think it just sits uneasily with narrative in a fun way. I started solving on paper and I definitely prefer it. I don't do it as often as I should, but solving on paper is a huge boon to the focus. Absolutely. I'm a New Yorker, so the opposite of that is also true. Like when I solve on the subway, I kind of feel better at crosswords than when I solve at my desk. And there's something about the novelty of moving. When I solve at my desk, it's the same place that I do my day job. It's the same place that I write. It's the same place that I, do my taxes, right? There's something nice about being in flux. Um, I also think that there's two things I want to recommend. One is to look out at the beautiful broad horizon of new puzzle energies and pick one. So Puzzmo, which edited by my friend Brooke, um, is really really good at both being novel and interesting and fresh, but also catering to the very new solver. Um, Doing sort of in the weeds things like letting you know where word breaks are, giving you hints above and beyond the clues, right? So that's a place I would check out the puzzles. Um, and there's, I write puzzles for the New Yorker as well. And I think that if you're someone who likes pop culture music. I mean, like my puzzles, I'm a drummer. There's always drummers in my crosswords. Like I'm a poet. There's always poets in my crosswords. I work in international immigration. There's always words and people that aren't in English in my puzzles. And the New Yorker's really good at trying to preserve that voice. And so when you solve a New Yorker puzzle, you might find someone whose wavelength you're more easily connected to. And so yeah, again, Puzzmo, the New Yorker, there's a huge universe of new puzzles to see what will click with you. Um, the second thing I'll say is, my wife is a visual artist. She for years when we were dating, I mean, it wasn't that she wasn't into puzzles or really was and didn't try. It's just like not a thing for her. She wasn't a big crossword person. And I'm not one of those people who's like, you gotta like what I do. But eventually, she was like, I want to get good at solving. Can you help me? And I think the biggest thing that unlocked it for her is this maxim that solving a puzzle eventually becomes much more of a logic game than a trivia quiz. So a lot of people think the puzzle's shaming them for not knowing X, Y, or Z. But really, when you start doing things like penciling in an S at the end of a plural, or understanding that English is so consonant heavy because we get all these words from Germanic roots that underneath those consonants is where you're going to get your aioli and your Oreos kind of helping things along. And treating the puzzle like a logic game, I think, is a good key to solving it, but also takes some of the shame away from the I don't know who this person is. Well, I don't either. I just know it has to end in A, and it's a four-letter name, and so I'm going to try Etta, and maybe it's about, Etta James because it's about a singer, right? Like using logic much more than being a insufferable know-it-all ends up being the key to being good at puzzles.